Nathan Hopper,
Here.
Tracy Nyan,
Here.
Rob Rambo.
Here.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that, Justina. So we
Nathan
do
Hopper,
Here.
Oh,
Tracy Nyan.
Here.
do you hear it?
I'm not saying it.
Sorry, that was probably me because I was watching the live stream.
Okay. Got a little worried there, like, wait a minute, who's that? Okay, well, good there. So before we just dive into the rest of business, just a reminder that because of the holiday, we have planning and zoning, which is meeting at 6:30. So I know that Steve attends that. John, I don't see him, but he would normally attend that as well. So I think that gives us good motivation to try to be as efficient as possible and work our way through the agenda. So with that, what I would ask is that before we get into the rest of it, if we can just get a motion, I'd like to rearrange the order of the agenda after public participation occurs, that instead of public works, we will go into administration, since we know that's Steve's area, and that way we can get through that business first, so that we could make sure we get him all set up by planning and zoning time. So if that's okay, is someone make a motion for that and a second? So made by Councilmember Nyan. Is there a second? Made by Councilmember Edens. And again, the motion is to change the order of the agenda so that after public participation, we will do administration, then followed by public works. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Right, that motion passes. So moving on now into our agenda, public participation. So question is if we have anyone from the public attending. I see a Mr. John Young, who is a familiar face. I think we need to put him in the meeting. But other than him under the attendee list, I don't see anyone else. Is that correct, Mr. Cross?
Actually, Mr. Brown is handling that side of this business, and I think he's getting ready to move John over. There we go.
All right.
There he goes.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else on the attendees list. We just moved John over, so I think we're good.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move forward. So now we'll get into administration. So we've got a couple for information items. So information items, we just want to be able to give an opportunity to give updates on these items. We're not expecting any action. Yes, Justina.
Did you do you didn't do the approval of the minutes, is that correct?
Oh, did I not? I
No.
apologize. You're right. Thank you for keeping us straight there, Justina.
You're welcome.
So we're going to go back to approval of the minutes. So the minutes for the August 3rd meeting, is there a motion for approval of the minutes? Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Edens. Is there any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Justina. Thanks so much. See, great to have you here tonight. All right, so we're going to go back to where we were there, starting on for administration for information items. So we've got a couple of items here. I'm hopeful that these are just brief updates. And again, no specific actions at this point regarding these items. So first item is the open position administration. So the city administrator, Cross, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Garetano. As you all know, we have an open position in the administration department by virtue of Julian Jacquin leaving the city and going to Colorado, where I guess there's snow, like behind Ms. Dodwell there. So what I've been doing is since he left is a couple of things. Number one, trying to keep current on any of the issues that he was working on. He left me a pretty comprehensive list of some things that were going on. So I've been looking at that to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. But in addition, looking at the position so that we can I can fill that position with the appropriate person as soon as it makes sense to do so. What I have done is I've done a couple of things. I put together kind of a draft open position with a potential job title, with some potential responsibilities and so forth. And again, this is just kind of a stream of consciousness, a thought process that one, I committed to paper, and two, I have reviewed with a number of folks from the mayor on down to a number of folks. I reviewed this document with the Economic Development Committee group a couple weeks ago at their meeting, and we had a discussion. I was seeking input from them in terms of what they see in the position. I explained and I'm doing the same thing with this group here. I'm seeking input in terms of what you all see in terms of that position. What I want to do is I want to retain all the good points, all the good things that Julian was doing in that position, the things that made sense to the city as it relates to economic development for the city of Wildwood, which is different than the communities around us, but also then to kind of restructure those things that I feel that probably didn't bring as much value to the city as we had hoped. And so I want to kind of minimize those. And I also want to expand that position to call it, since it truly is a marketing position for the city, that is marketing our city to the folks outside of this building, is to incorporate a true marketing arm, an aspect to that position. We do some marketing inside, we do social media and so forth, and I want to incorporate that under that same umbrella. But what I was hoping to get from you all, and we can discuss it tonight to the extent that we have time to do so, but even more importantly, if you have thoughts that you want to just send to me in an email, that would be most appreciated. I'm certainly not making this decision in a vacuum. That's far from it. So I am seeking input from as many folks that know the position, that work with the position. And I'm talking, as I say, from the mayor on down to city staff and so forth. I'm open to suggestions and what you all see, kind of using this guideline that I put together. So, Mr. Garitano, that really just kind of summarizes what I wanted to say, and then we can take it from there if you wish.
All right, so well, thanks for introducing the item, providing an update on what you're doing there. So is it fair to say that you're seeking input right now from the committee? So if there's any input, this would be a good time, or you will seek it any other way by email if folks have thoughts regarding the position. Is that what you're trying to get at right now?
Yes, sir. The two committees that are very important in this process that I feel have a lot of input is the Economic Development Committee that was chaired by Councilmember Edens, and she and her team, her committee, provided a lot of good input at that meeting. But I am seeking the same from this knowledgeable group of folks, based on kind of the way I've kind of laid out where I want to take this position, and get your thoughts as well, so that when I make a decision, I'm making it with some prudent knowledge and benefits for the city. So yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's good to know. All right, so therefore, committee, the ask is if you have any input regarding the position, that again, you could either raise your hand and provide it at this time, and Mr. Cross, assume you'll capture that feedback, or if you want to think about it and follow up with Mr. Cross by email, you could do that. I do see two hands here, so Councilmember Edens and then Bertolino, so I'll let you.
Yeah, I know we're really pushed on time, so I just wanted to paraphrase kind of what our committee discussed, and I know Dave and Katie are on the committee as well, and if I don't encompass everyone's thoughts enough, they can feel free to add in. But
so
generally,
just answering the question, the input on the position.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So myself and other members of the committee felt that we were very pleased with the previous responsibilities and would like to see the continuation of the same role. We thought that the job was more than just a liaison to the businesses. The comments regarding the addition of social media, a couple of the feedback comments were if we needed someone else part-time to cover that, that could be a separate role. There were some comments where we would be amenable to some coverage overlap of communications for posting more about businesses on Twitter or on Facebook, for example. We just didn't want the position to totally become more of a communications role and not enough in economic development, because that, again, that is where the committee saw itself in the future. More than just business relations, someone that can write the economic development guide.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
Yep.
Oh, is that right? Dave, do you have any input on the position?
Yeah, just two quick things, Steve. I think the title, if we're going to keep it as manager, I think we should use that in the title, obviously, and drop the coordinator tagline there. I would just say it's manager, economic development and communications, as what Julian was involved in. But maybe that's a minor issue, but we think we should consider it. The bigger thing, Steve, I would say is you listed 4 items, and they're all encompassing of all of the tons of different things, different tasks. I think we need to prioritize those. If I was a candidate looking at this, and I was really strong in communications, okay, that was really my suit, my long suit. I was a media person, yada yada. I wasn't quite as exposed to or experienced in the economic development, the marketing aspect, but I've done some. Would my resume fit this description? And as it looks right now, these are all equal. I do think we need to weigh those a little bit. So somebody looking at it says, this is really an economic development job. Oh, and by the way, you also handle all of the communications and coordination. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and I appreciate that. And yes, I would weight it exactly the way you said it. I think, if it was a 60-40 or 70-30, I'm just picking numbers out of the air, but economic development along business development and communications being the smaller number. So no, that's an excellent suggestion, and thank you for that. And thank you, Ms. Edens, too, for your input. I appreciate it very much. It's very helpful to me.
See any other hands up? So being that, then what I would say is, if you do have feedback for Steve, to gather the input. And I think you're doing a good job doing that, looking at all the stakeholders that interface with the role. So you collect that input, really good to see what comes out of it. So, all right, I don't see any other hands up. So with that, I will then move on to the next information item, which is the update on the electric vehicle charging stations. City Administrator Cross.
With your permission, Mr. Garitano, Mr. Brown's going to handle this particular line item.
Sure, thank you. Director Brown.
Thank you, Steve. This is just primarily an update as far as the status of this item. We have received, haven't provided the information yet to the committee. We are in progress still of finalizing costs for the potential electric vehicle charging station on Main Street. I do have some numbers in hand from IBP, which is the vendor that we originally contacted. We were put in contact with by Councilmember Rambo. So I do have some numbers from them for a DC fast charge site, but I'm still lacking the final numbers from Ameren. There may be some costs involved from Ameren, from their perspective, to modify and get power to the site. So that information is still lacking at this point. So, and then of course, ultimately there would be some rebates that would be involved to hopefully reduce the cost. So I haven't heard back from Ameren just yet. We'll start pushing harder on my end to get that information finalized so that we can provide it back to the committee by the next meeting.
And then if I may, Mr. Garitano, add to that, then we'd mentioned in the past that we did get a quote from a second vendor who provided us, and for a fast charging, well, actually it was multiple, a slow charge, a medium, and a fast charge. They provided information for the cost of the equipment, but they did not give us a quote for the cost for installation. And so we are chasing that as well. So we've got half from two separate vendors, and we definitely need at least two vendors so that we know that when we go down this road that we've got competitive quotes. But we're missing part of the quote from each one. So Rick's pursuing the first one, I'm pursuing the second one. So we just wanted to at least give you that update to know that we haven't forgot about it. We haven't dropped it. We just Ameren is being real slow, and they're not responding, but I see people nodding their heads because everybody knows about Ameren. So so Rick's got the harder challenge than I do, quite honestly, in terms of trying to wrangle a number out of them. But we're staying on top of it. We really are.
All right, well, thanks for the update. It definitely sounds like once you get all of that information, then you'll be in a position to come back to the committee. And I would anticipate then maybe we may have to make some decision as to which way we go with it. So are there any questions regarding the electric vehicle charging stations? And Councilmember Rambo, I see your hand up, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, I'll make this real quick. The impetus behind this was manifold. One element of it was the Ameren rebates and so on and so forth, and also the ability of at least the one vendor to take advantage of the tax, the federal tax credit by buying the stuff at wholesale, taking the credit, passing that savings along to us, et cetera. And it was going to be, relatively cheap. And we had decided on the parameters, a level 2 or 2 level 2s and a level 3, I think. And I just want to make sure we don't get in the mode of letting the project drive us. And it sounds like we're talking to one group about slow, medium, and fast charging and so forth. We should make sure that we keep the what we're asking them for defined so they can get back to us with numbers that we can compare apples to apples and make a call. And so I'm confident that we're going to do that. The main question that I have is Ameren was insistent that it wasn't going to cost us much of anything from them in the one location that we originally talked about. And I think Mr. Brown has found some locations that he likes better or that might be better for us, or one of the vendors likes better or something. And I'm wondering if the Ameren costs are because we're changing locations, or is it just because they've decided, oh yeah, we need to upgrade that transformer, or is it a combination? Rick, can you speak to that just real quickly, please?
So it sounds like there's two questions. So first, Rob, is
No, the first, well, yeah, go ahead.
The apples to apples, making sure that the same criteria is the same for the different vendors, just to compare. But then your second question is that if we are looking at the location being a variable, that
and the first one was more of a statement or an observation. I'm confident that we're gonna try to steer it back in the direction that it needs to go. But I'm curious about the other part of it, because Ameren is a bogey, and they weren't initially.
Before Rick answers the second question, Mr. Garetano, if I may, Mr. Rambo, your point is well taken. But we did exactly as you just described. We took, because the folks, the IVP, I think is the company's name. I may have that a little bit wrong, but I think that was the name. So we took the same information, we provided that to the second vendor and said, give us a quote for the exact same kind of equipment, the same charging capabilities, so that we are in fact comparing apples to apples. Not only for the cost of the equipment, but for the installation as well. So we are definitely going to do that. And then ultimately, the goal of Rick and I is to come back to this committee and say, okay, here are the options, either the type of equipment as well as the location of the equipment. And here are the costs for installation, and for this kind of charger, that kind of charger, and so forth. So I assure you, Mr. Rambo, that when we do come back to the committee, it will be apples to apples. Now, with regards to Ameren, that I'm going to defer to Mr. Brown on that one. in terms of the cost. I think we may have found where it wasn't quite as, and by the way, the second vendor is offering the same kind of incentives. These are tax incentives that it doesn't matter who it is, that the city would be eligible for those. So it's not just an Ameren deal. Anybody.
Well, no, the one was a creative way for them to take a tax credit and then pass the savings along to us. And it seemed like a non-standard thing. They may both be offering it, but it's a different pot to be drawing from. That's over and above the subsidies for early on adoption of the technology. So it's a little bit different thing.
I understand. I'm a little concerned, however, that when we want to go down a little bit further that path with Ameren, they're not being responsive to us, and that concerns me. That it may have been a little, throw something out, but they're not standing behind it. But I'm going to let Mr. Brown talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the subsidy that creative tax credit thing came from the vendor, but Ameren was insistent that we didn't need any upgrade, and we got the price down to relatively trivial. I can't recall, it was like 20 grand for all in for the charging stations that we wanted, and I'd hate to see us try to build the perfect beast here and wind up spending 50 or more on it.
No, we wouldn't want to do that, but we have no money in the budget, regardless if it's 20 grand or 10 grand or 50 grand. There's nothing in the 2021 budget for this line item for this year anyway. But
I'm sorry, Rick, I probably cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I really hadn't commented yet, but it's hard for me to even really answer the question because Ameren hasn't gotten back to us. From what I understood, they will make a calculation based on the amount of power that location will draw, essentially. And they'll offset essentially what they're going to sell power relative to our costs. So that goes into the equation. There will be some cost to provide power if we were to do it on street, and that would be above and what would be necessary in the garage. I think.
Okay. So it's a different transformer and
the location on street versus the location in the garage relative to accessibility and the site. So, but I haven't heard back, so I really don't know what that cost is. If any.
So the transformer feeding the garage was very lightly loaded. The one feeding the street may not be so lightly loaded, and it has other customers that they could sell the power to. And we also have to bore out to the locations and so on and so forth. So the price is going to go up if we put it out on the street, but that may be the right place, for other reasons. So
a lot of good discussion here, and I think that when you come back to us, Rick, I kind of think back when we were doing the waste contract and we looked at almost like a big spreadsheet, a menu. And you're like, if you pick this, this is what the cost is. And if you get this, sir, I'm going to imagine that, Rick, you tell me, but it looks like we're going to be able to look at this and then we'll probably make some decisions if the additional costs, let's say for location A versus B, is warranted.
Yes, I would agree. That would allow you to make those judgments as to cost versus location.
Okay, well, I think that's a good thing, and we may even want to at some point, look at those locations, do a walk and make sure to kind of, or if you happen to come to council meeting, take a look at those spots ahead of time when we get that information. We're not there yet, not ready for it. But Rob, that's good, and thanks.
Sure, the delay could work in our favor. When the federal money hits. Part of that is intended to improve the charging infrastructure. So it could all work out for the best. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Good timing. Well, then we'll move on to the next one, which is the item number 3, the update on accessibility compliance. So I don't see Councilmember Clark here, but City Administrator Cross, I'm assuming you want me to go ahead and then share an update on what I had a discussion with Councilmember Clark regarding this?
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, I think you and Councilmember Clark we're having some good discussions. So if you don't mind.
Yeah, so then I will do that. So just to keep everyone informed, this was an item that was raised, that was requested by Councilmember Clark. And so what we determined was that we would take the conversation offline. Sorry for the background noise, the dog barking. Somebody's probably walking. But anyway, we did have two conversations to try to put some of the thoughts and ideas around what we could bring back to you and ultimately the council, at least something that we can put in kind of a framework as far as what is the accessibility or what are the needs that could be potentially addressed. So the work is still in progress, but a lot of thought is going into making sure that there's the right input into getting feedback regarding where do our residents see needs, what would they like to see more of, what do you as council members see needs, what does the city staff see and hear, and also looking at some of the resources that are available in the communities around us that are designed for serving the folks with disabilities. So we are thinking there's some work that we would do, and of course, always open to folks that want to help and be a part of it. We haven't gotten yet into the logistics of how we'll do that, but that input process I think is key. Another key aspect of it is just really trying to raise awareness as far as like what are some of those stories from those folks that either live in our community or have these disabilities, so that we can hear firsthand accounts of some of the things. And I will share an example because I think the spirit is there and we do things, but even a little thing like, for example, putting a handicapped porta potty, you think you're putting it out on the field, it could serve the group, but you have to put it in a location that a wheelchair person can wheel to it, and it's very difficult in the dirt versus putting it where they can do it from a flat surface. So things that I myself weren't even aware of. So I think it's going to be a good experience. So quite a bit of work. So we'll come back to this. This is a work in progress. We have nothing at this point to bring to you as far as any decisions, but we will certainly do that once we have more of the framework put together. So I do see one hand, Councilmember Edens.
Yes, so when we originally put this on the agenda, it was with the previous city administrator. So it's been on for, what, 1.5 years now? And it started as a request for sexual harassment training.
I'm sorry, no. I was talking about work update on the accessibility compliance.
Right, but there was on diversity, equity, and inclusion was on the media
Is that-
appointment too. So I'm sorry.
Is that the next one before the workforce training?
Yes, but I was
Okay.
going to say we could go ahead and I was going to try to bridge the two because one component could include some of the diversity and issues. I'll hold my horses.
Okay, hold that thought just a
Yeah.
second. All right, so with that, I am going to now, I don't see any other hands up. But again, we'll keep you informed as we try to do that. And again, this is something to bring back to the committee, and then the committee can decide how to move forward. So we will then move on to the next item, which is the workforce training. So the city administrator does have an update on that. And then Lauren, I'll come to you with your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for working with Councilmember Clark on the accessibility. I think she's got some great ideas, and you kind of stepping in and leading the charge with her. We got a good start on that and developed some things that will lead to an item that will come before this committee in the not too distant future in terms of a survey. We had a pretty full agenda. But in conversations that the chair and I have had recently with regards to incorporating some of the things that would come out of the accessibility issue, we can incorporate into a larger survey of our residents that we haven't done in a while. So again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for handling that. Very much appreciated. with regards to workforce training, this is an item that's been on the agenda for a while, and it had been kind of been languishing down in the not ready for action. But Ms. Edens had brought it up recently, and so what we did, our HR coordinator, Carla Patrick, I'd asked her to reach out. So as I mentioned to you at the time that this came up on the was moved up into further up on our agenda for some action. I mentioned that she is a member of the Shroom organization. So she reached out to the folks there and did a survey, as well as some of our other contacts within the HR community in terms of various tools that they use for training purposes. And we're talking two different kind of training here. We're talking about training for staff, and we're talking about training for council. So, and those are two different things. The training for staff, it falls underneath my responsibility. Training for council is something that the council decides. As you all know, those of you that are council members, we can suggest, but we cannot require training of any kind on the council folks. You all can choose to do that. We can offer it, but it's entirely up to you all. The city has no authority as an elected official to require you to attend any kind of training, and that comes directly from Mr. Young. However, what Carla did, and she did a great job, she identified this organization called mediapartners.com and found out that an awful lot of the municipalities around us use this same tool. It's very comprehensive. It has all kinds of programs, diversity and equality and inclusion and sexual harassment. And you can see the summary that she put together that we had as an attachment for this item. My role will be to use this and look and see what is appropriate for staff here in terms of any training that we may want to do. And this committee, with the help of Ms. Edens, because she has a good background in this, can decide what might be appropriate for the council members. If there's something that you all feel that would be, that we might suggest to the council. But this seems to be a very, very good tool. It's very inexpensive. It's about $1,000 per module, and a module is like an entire, for diversity, equality, inclusion, et cetera. The modules are pretty broad and include a lot of topics, and the manner in which the information is disseminated varies as well. From either you can help self-study through going in and viewing a program online, as you all have done, I'm sure, in the past. There's videos, there's online training, there's all sorts of things that we can use. So from what we've ascertained, this is it's specific for governments and seems to be pretty comprehensive. So I think Carla did a great job in identifying this, and so we've at least got the tool that we believe that we could then go down the road and see how it makes sense for the staff, and then you all making the decision in terms of perhaps the council. So, Mr. Chair, I guess that's all I would say at this point, but certainly happy to answer any questions.
Well, yeah, I'll open up to see if there are any questions, but maybe one thing you could answer, if that may answer some questions, are, so what are your next steps regarding this? Where do you see going from here now that you've identified media partners?
I think to sit down and start with the department heads, and from where I sit, there's not a specific issue. I'm not aware of anything, and I've had many conversations with Carla to find out if anyone has come to her about any allegations or anything, and the answer was a hard no. There isn't anything that she's aware of, and nor that I'm aware of any specific issues. That doesn't mean, however, that training isn't important. But by the same token, so I have to find the right balance in terms of talking to the department heads and saying, okay, what do we think in terms of what would be a good training for all of us that might be relevant in today's world, and so forth. So, I mean, I'm not going to just let this go. I want to talk to people, but I also have to be realistic, and I say this. We have 27 people running the city, at least from the staff perspective, and everybody, I mean, we have a year's worth of backlog on each and every one of our desks. To try to fit in training is a little difficult and try to keep up with everything that we have to do. So I'm not going to lie to you, and you all that are in business, you know this. Training sometimes takes a back seat to just getting the job done every day. I know that may sound harsh, but it's a reality, and it sure as heck is a reality here at City Hall. So I am not going to ask staff to take their time out and trying to put together the packets and respond to the 10 or 15 requests we get every day from council members and the mayor and everybody else. But we will look at it, and when it's appropriate, we're going to try to do that, at least from the staff perspective, and then you all can deal with the council perspective. So those are the next steps as I see it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, so I got 3 hands up. So Councilmember Evans.
Yes, I apologize for merging the previous 2 agenda items. In my mind, they were connected. And so I will now go on my previous spiel and then continue with additional thoughts. So again, thanks for bearing with me. What I was trying to say was by adding that diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff and hopefully council members, we can still make process on some of Councilmember Clark's concerns while we're doing separate surveys, while we're working on tangible physical changes to maybe what our community looks like to make it more accessible. So this is something that can happen now and not wait. But for some of the new members, like Mr. Cross said, this has been on the agenda. It has languished. One of the things that I envisioned besides staff mandatory training was that the kind of the way to encourage council members to participate, because as he said, we can't require it, is there would be a designation on the website, like next to our name. This person is compliance certified. This person is compliance certified. Oh, this person is not. And so I think it's great that there's nothing that we are worried about in terms of issues on the work front and staff. But as mentioned, this is about prevention. It's about making a statement of values as an organization, as an employer. These are our values. These are our standards. It's about reinforcing the attitude that there's a safe environment. Staff turns over. We're always sad when people move on, but maybe there was something in the past. Maybe somebody felt like they couldn't come forward. We don't know. I just don't ever want to make the assumption that there isn't something that happened 10 years ago that we don't know about. The other thing is how important it is to be a change agent for institutional change. City Administrator Cross is right. There's reasons why this typically takes the back seat, and it's hard to ask people to do more. But I want to challenge you with this thought as someone in charge or as department heads that are in charge. If you are not moving forward, you are enabling something that has potential to cause conflict or be a danger to somebody else. So by not taking action, you're enabling a potentially outdated work environment. Not having these types of harassment training, that's outdated. So I want you guys to be part of the solution and make this a priority and push for it. And I want to challenge my council members to do that for us as well. Institutional change is important. Righting a ship and turning it slowly is hard. But I do want to challenge you to ask staff to do the extra work even though they don't have time, because here's the thing, they're never going to have the time to do it. So you kind of have to make it, and we do too. So I wish this was for action, because I would go ahead and say that I want to bring this to council. I'm not sure that I can tonight, but when I look at this, the programs, I mean, they all make sense, except maybe for us, maybe not the supervisor and manager development. Since it's geared towards government, I'm not sure if that would be appropriate for whoever holds the mayor position now or in the future. I hesitate to scratch workplace violence prevention or anything like that. Leadership development could be very helpful. We constantly want to get the new generation of committee heads. So I just really, really, really want to hammer home, let's make the time for it, because there's never going to be time where we don't have a backlog on our plates. And let's have this for action as soon as possible for council members.
Okay, so I do have three more hands up, and again, I'm just
Oh,
trying.
and good program. Good job to Miss Patrick for picking this. I looked at it.
So I want to try to keep us on track with time because we do have another item where it's critical for the city administrator to discuss. So are these, I'll ask if this is just questions for clarity regarding this information update. Again, there's no action being asked of it. The city administrator would be the one to implement this. So the council can then choose to decide how it wants to pursue, like Councilmember Edens discussed. So I see I think it was Councilmember Hopper, Bertolino, and Dodwell. So I'll start with Councilmember Hoppers. Do you have a question or additional information about it?
Just more of a question around that. I know with part of the training, and I'm sure it's something that was considered, but I know we had also kind of discussed looking at some cybersecurity awareness training as being a piece of that as well, as far as helping them recognize, training to help recognize, phishing attacks and things like that, because I know that's a big concern for the city. So I just didn't know if this was on the same path with that. Usually they'll kind of implement their training all together as from one provider. So I didn't know if that was still on the roadmap, or at least on your radar of having something like that implemented as well. I will kind of echo a little bit of what Councilmember Eden said of training. It's really frustrating, and I've been in multiple organizations where the trainings always seems like it's, God, I don't have time to do that. So why are you bothering with this? Is ridiculous training, but it just sort of is one of those, you got to find the time to do it and then just get it off your plate. But my question was around the cybersecurity awareness training, and if that was still on the radar and as part of an overall training program to include that to help avoid future ransomware attacks and such.
Mr. Chair, I'll answer real quickly, if with your permission, if you don't mind. It is on the radar. I'm handling that separately. I do have I have two documents. And in fact, I'm having a meeting tomorrow with an outside IT firm to review the document that was prepared at my request by our current IT vendor. It's about a 15-page document supporting everything that they are doing that we are protected from ransomware. And then I have a separate document from Civic Plus that manages our city website, also identifying how we are protected from ransomware. Once those two documents, I am confident that particularly the one from ThrottleNet, who is our IT vendor, I'm having an outside agency review that and make sure there are no holes in it. Then that would be a separate training to make sure that people aren't clicking on spam and that sort of thing. So Councilmember Hopper, thanks for bringing that up. But I view that kind of as separate from the kind of training that Ms. Edens was talking about. One's technical training, the other is workplace training. Mr. Chair, may I just make well, I'll tell you what, I'll defer to the other council members, but I would like to just kind of respond to Ms. Edens at the end after the other council members have all asked their questions or made their comments, please.
Okay, and again, this is again just information update, so we'll try to keep focused on that. So I think the next person is Councilmember Bertolino. Is that
My hand's down, Joe. Okay.
Oh, all right, Councilmember Dodwell, was your hand up as well?
Yes, it was. I'm not going to speak very long here. I just think we need to get everybody on the same page, from the council to the employees. While these do take time, and while many of your employees may say, no, I don't have time to do this, I wholeheartedly concur with Ms. Edens that by picking a couple of these and putting it out in front of your employees, it sets the bar a little bit higher to make sure that they are aware of how they can impact other employees in certain comments they may make, in certain interactions that they may have, and it provides you with a better workforce, Steve. So I would just ask that you look at a way to incorporate, many of these are only 25 minutes. I know there's some that are a couple of hours, but maybe look at how you can put together a package that would say, I'll give you a month to go through this, that kind of thing. I just think it's very important For the council, I also think it's important, those of you who were not here in prior years, I know we can't make council members do it, which I feel is really unfortunate, but I think somehow we need to set up a methodology that would require some kind of a respectful environment for working with each other under, because prior council members just didn't have that training and or understanding. So I'd be more than happy to look at some of these in more detail and give you some suggestions on which ones those might be that we put out in front of the council. But it'd be nice if we could go through at least one that I found and then be able to have a group discussion either at a council meeting or an off-size discussion as council members, just to talk about how we respect each other. That's all. Not a problem right now, but in the future, I think it needs to be something that's taught at the start of each year.
Thank you, Katie. All right, Councilmember Edens.
Yeah, just for the newer folks, remedial kindness was needed before desperately. But I would like to make a formal motion that this reappear as a for action item. It sounds like, with my understanding from Mr. Cross, is that we really just need to be voting on a policy for council members, unless I misunderstood that we can also make a recommendation as a committee for staff. So we'll make, my motion is to make it as inclusive as possible. So whether that's staff and elected officials or just elected officials. And it would be super appreciated if in the memo, Ms. Patrick could include a recommendation about a timetable. So perhaps it's recommended is within the first 2 or 3 months that someone's elected or appointed. If there's a gold star system for doing it quicker, you know, what sort of recommendation we're going to do. So that's my motion.
So let me just ask, just for John, if you could just keep us straight here, because it is a for information item. So I just want to make sure we're okay doing that kind of motion. And then the second question is, what jurisdiction do we have over, like, as far as the city staff versus the council? So John, are you hearing us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am hearing it. Forgive me for I've been on my phone right now, so hopefully everything will be working well. But in terms of a motion to put this on for action at the next meeting, there's no objection. That's a procedural motion and perfectly appropriate, and that's fine. In terms of the question of jurisdiction over staff, I think the way I understand it, it was going to be a recommendation from the committee that the training be done, not a mandate. Obviously, the committee cannot mandate the staff do anything, or that the city administrator require anything of staff, but certainly can make recommendations on what they'd like to see. Really, the city council's prerogative is ultimately going to be about a budget, because it's about making sure that the training requirements as it relates to staff are properly budgeted for.
Okay, thank you. All right, so therefore, what would be appropriate then would be just the motion for that. I mean, I don't have an issue unless there's any objections from the group, that we will put that then on the next meeting agenda as a for action item, and as the city attorney advised, recommendation for city staff, and then the council as we wish to do for the council. All right, if that's okay, or Councilmember Edens, again, if you feel like you want to make the motion, I'm good with that too. Whatever is best for you.
If you're going to put it on without objection, that's good enough for me. It'll save us time from a formal vote. So,
all right, Mr. Cross, just remember to make a note on that. So we're good there. Thank you. All right. So the next item is we've got 7 minutes, and it isn't actually a for action item being brought by the city administrator. Do you think you have time to go through it, or
Mr. Chair, I think so. I think that this committee is very well aware of where we're going with this. There was a discussion, as you all recall, in closed session with council as we discussed various security measures in chambers. There were just a couple of you who weren't there at the time, but most of you were there. And there were several things that were assigned to me to look into. I won't repeat them now because they are security measures. So I won't get into those. So but I assure you that I have quotes for the things that we did discuss. But you will also recall that I brought up, as I did 2 years ago, and made the suggestion that I thought, as the city administrator or the interim city administrator at the time anyway, that it was important, I thought anyway, and for the safety of the council members, the residents, everybody coming to chambers on a council meeting night, that they pass through a metal detector, just as they do during court night. There was a bit of pushback by a couple of council members at that time, but we have a new council, and I brought it back up. The mayor, this should, rightfully so, go before the committee, this committee, in terms of, so what I'm asking is for you all to consider implementing metal detectors, a metal detector. We have a metal detector. We have the staff to do it. The captain has already indicated he's quite willing to do it on Monday nights, or his people would do that. And then people would pass through the metal detector as they come into the council chambers on a council night. So I'm just offering that up for discussion for this committee to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So the action, since it is under for action, is it the recommendation that from the city administrator recommendation that the committee would forward to council?
That would be the recommendation. If you all feel that's important to make the recommendation, then that we would carry forward to council, that it came out of this committee that you all are recommending implementing the use of a metal detector at council meetings going forward. That would be the recommendation. Yes, sir.
Okay, so the easiest way to go about it is if someone wants to make a motion, and then we'll have a motion on the floor. So Councilmember Dodwell, looks like you got your hand up for that motion. And
I'll make the motion that we utilize the existing metal detector for entrance into our city council meetings.
Councilmember Rambo, is that a second there at hand, or is that from before?
I'm sorry, I actually had a question, but I'll second it, sure.
Okay.
No, actually, I don't want to second it.
All right, so do we have someone that's willing to second it at this time? Councilmember Hopper. All right, so we got the motion on the floor. So Councilmember Rambo, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I don't recall pushing back in the closed session meeting, but it kind of feels like overkill to me, but I'm happy to accede to people's sensibilities, because I don't pay much attention to safety, and I really, really should. So my question is do we know a definitive cost for this? There's some manpower associated with it. I know the machines, someone was saying something outrageous about the cost of the machine, but it's really, we determined that it was like 7 or 10 grand for a second one if we decide to secure the entire building. There are parameters that I don't think we've fully talked through, or at least haven't nailed down. We're going to secure the building. We're just going to secure the council chamber. We're going to have a detector upstairs and a detector downstairs, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we're going to bring it forward to council, it seems as though we probably owe them a reasonable estimate of the cost, and maybe you guys have done all that work and I'm just behind. Can you speak to that, please?
So maybe just one thing I'll say is maybe some of your answers may be information that may not be appropriate in an open setting, like.
Oh, I'm sorry. For sure.
Yeah, because of security of the building. I'll defer to the city attorney if that's something that we need to take into a closed session. But I'll City Administrator Cross, go ahead if you want to take that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So it doesn't have to be an answer, a question. It can just be just be guidance. I mean, it seems really.
Well, just a couple things, Mr. Rambo. When I mentioned there was some pushback, I was talking about a previous council entirely from this.
Oh,
council.
sure, yeah.
So I wasn't.
exception.
No, that was a previous council. The things that you mentioned, yes, are all taken into consideration. There would be a small amount of overtime for the police officers to man the station, the metal detector. And the amount that was discussed, the cost of it, I threw out a number and I was way off. My memory was bad that night completely. So it was a lot smaller expenditure. And again, it's already paid for. But in terms of how we would actually implement it and those kinds of things, yes, those parameters would be discussed, and we would probably do that in a closed session at a work session. The mayor has his opinions in terms of the use of it, but the whole council needs to discuss that. I know what I would recommend, but we won't talk about that in an open meeting. But everything that you have just brought up has been discussed with the captain, and we do have our recommendations. But what I was asking of this committee was just, do we want to go forward at all? If it stopped in this committee, that was the end of it. If you all did feel that you don't want to do it, but that's what I was hoping we'd at least get a vote to then carry it to the next level, and then I would fill in those gaps, Mr. Rambo.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Steve, that, maybe when this goes to council, according to advice from our city attorney, we will do that closed session. And then you can also have some of the detail that Councilmember Rambo asked about. Was there a hand up, Councilmember Bertolino? Did you have a hand
I
up?
had it up, but Steve covered it. And I was going to say that when we had this last discussion, it was the council was going to set sort of the general parameters, but the tactics of how you implement were going to be recommendations from Kevin Mandel and his staff. So I think we're on the right path of let's get it back, and let's make the recommendation, and then let the captain do his thing.
So I'm sensing consensus to send it to council and then have a discussion with the broader council and the work session. Seeing that doesn't look like there's any objection, I'll say let's vote on that. So we have the motion on the floor. All those in favor, say aye of the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
any oppose? Any abstain? All right, that's unanimous. So we'll send that on to council. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, committee. I really appreciate you supporting this. I think it's for the safety of everyone involved, and I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you have to go to that other meeting now, 6:30?
We're okay for now.
Okay.
They have some housekeeping to do for another 10 or 15 minutes. So we're okay.
You like watching two meetings. You could be in two places at the same time.
Well, this group is much more fun, and this is more interesting than P&Z. So I think I'll stay here and hang out with you all for a while if it's okay.
Yeah, no, big shout out to everyone. We're really making good progress. We covered a lot of items, and it's only an hour. So
now we can just get Mr. Brown to whip through his things.
So that's exactly what we've got. We're going to go now to Public Works, and we don't have any for information. We've got 3 for action. So that first one, the proposed city contractor agreement with Gamma Tree Service for the fall tree planting. Rick, it sounds like this is back again, continuing from what we started earlier this year.
That's correct, Chair Garitano. As you know, early this year, we went through a process. We prepared and submitted a request for proposals for tree planting that envisioned a 2-stage or 2-phase effort, spring and fall. We did choose Gamma Tree Service last spring, and they did plant 62 trees in the town center area at that time. So we'd like to move forward now with phase 2, which would be the fall tree planting project. And we'd like to recommend another agreement with Gamma Tree Service to plant 150 new trees. These would be in the residential neighborhoods, in the tree lawn areas, generally speaking, and they would replace existing trees, generally the ash trees that have been removed. As we did in the spring, we're planning to utilize the number 15 container stock, and we're working with Andy Berg currently to develop or to identify trees at nurseries that we could plant. So he's working on reserving 150 trees. The 150 is a number that is a bit of a stretch for us based on past years. I think the average I figured has been about 70 trees a year, but given the emerald ash borer and the infestation that we're experiencing, I certainly feel like it's necessary to push the number of trees that we've been planting previously to try to keep up with the emerald ash borer. So we are proposing to do another 150 trees in this fall. So the recommendation is to move forward with a city contract agreement with Gamma Tree Service for fall tree planting. The not to exceed amount of that contract would be $45,000. And again, that's based on the price that was bid in their proposal to the city earlier this spring. And so with that, I will certainly open it up for any questions.
And Rick, before I do open it up, just one question that maybe I'm not seeing in the document. Is that already within the budget for 2021, the 45,000, just the source of funds?
Yes, that is in the budget. We do have some funds under the capital improvement program for the tree planting and the replacement trees for the emerald ash borer. So it is budgeted.
Okay, good. All right. So Rick is looking for a motion action on his recommendation, as he just stated here, to proceed with this. So let me just see if there's someone who's willing to make the motion, get a motion on the floor. Councilmember Edens, I see your hand up. That's a motion. Make the motion.
As stated by the department, 150 trees at the cost of $295 per tree, not to exceed 45,000 with Gamma Tree Service.
Perfect.
That's why my hand was up. I'll put it down.
You're good. Thank you. And then Councilmember, well, let me check. Councilmember Rambo, you had your hand up. So was that also for a motion or?
No, I'll let Ms. Dodwell, looks like she's ready to second it. I just had some questions.
Perfect. So Councilmember Dodwell, you'll be the second for that
Seconding
motion.
the motion.
Thank you so much. All right. So now back to you, Rob, and I'll let you go and ask your question.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. Several of us have noticed, and we've discussed this several times, and I don't want to be beating a dead horse, but I hope that we have decided to prioritize replacement of recently planted trees that are dead. I don't know if those come, if the replacements are free because the stock died within a year and so forth, but the new landscaping along Old Manchester has tons of dead trees, and we're trying to clean them up. And I'm not sure the status of that, but I drove down Main Street, the new part of Main Street that cuts off 109 headed east, and there are at least 24 trees that are just flat dead or nearly so in all of those that were planted. I don't know if the developer's responsible for that or what, but Rick, my basic, you understand the theme. It's just clean up what we have before we plant new. And I'm wondering if that's if we're going forward with that as our driving principle.
Rick, you want to go for that?
Well, let me just be clear. So relative to dead trees, that's a different issue. The Manchester Road project, let me answer if I can. Manchester Road project has one dead tree at this time on it. I'm not aware of any others that are dead, but we will certainly address the dead trees that are out there on prior projects. On Main Street, we have 6 trees in the town center area on Main Street and the other streets within the close proximity that were planted earlier in the spring that have died, just 6 out of the 62. There are some additional trees that have died that were not trees that we planted, but there were existing trees in place. So there's different things going on here. And I guess I want to make it real clear that of the trees we planted last spring, we've only lost about 6 in the immediate town center area around City Hall. Those are warranted trees, and those will be up for replacement as part of the warranty under that project. So it is our intention to have those replaced as well at no cost to the city. Beyond that, we have trees that were planted last year, again, that were warranted that we'll be looking at replacing. That is a separate issue that is not part of this approval and this contract with Gamma tonight.
Okay, so this may be a semantic difference between or disagreement between you and myself, but if I drive along and see a tree that has 6 branches 4 of which are dead, and there's a bunch of epicormic sprouts coming out around the remaining branches, and it's a butt ugly tree and it's never going to get any better, I'd call that a failure. And that's what I'm talking about along Old Manchester. And there's a lot more than one tree with that problem. And the Main Street complaint that I just made is specifically the new part that leaves Highway 109, swoops on up to the east toward City Hall, but it doesn't make it to City Hall because it stops there at I think it's at Etherton. I'm not sure, but there are, I'm going to say a dozen that are just pretty much dead, and a dozen more that are on their way out, and they're never going to come back. And if they do come back, they're going to be misshapen. That's the complaint that I'm making, and I'm wondering if that's
the trees on Main Street. In Main Street Crossing, those are trees that have been planted by the developer, and those trees will get replaced as part of the developer's closeout of that project. We do final inspections, and those trees have an escrow and escrow will not be released until we do the inspection and the developer replants those trees. But those are not city trees; those are not our direct responsibility.
That is great news. But I think you might need to take another look at Old Manchester. But I will take my solace in the notion that those are going to be replaced for free.
And I will tell you on Manchester, not Old Manchester, it's actually Manchester. There is one tree in the new streetscape section that is dead. Outside of that, there are a couple, but there's not a lot that are dead in that area. So I think by and large, they've done quite well. I mean, we unfortunately don't have 100% success rate when we plant trees. That's just a fact. I don't expect that will ever be 100%.
So you're talking about the streetscape, and I was calling it Old Manchester, but it's not actually called that at that location.
It's
just called Manchester Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, a good observation, Rob, and thanks for even noticing on Main Street there. All right, next hand up, Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, I just want to say, Rick, you kind of answered my question, but I guess actually this week I did have a resident on Green Pines Drive call me and say, "Hey, my tree that they planted last year is dead. What can you do?" He wasn't mad. He just said, "Who's responsible?" And I said, "Well, I'll pass it on to the director that we will replace those that died." So I'm doing my duty, and there is one on Green Pines that we did plant last year that was a replacement for an ash that we took out, and it does need to be replaced.
Yeah, in fact, I've had Andy Berg was out within the last 3 weeks, and he did an inspection of all the trees that were planted basically last year, and we did it through a trim grant. And so he has a list of all those trees as of the inspection a couple of weeks ago, and we will move forward on getting those addressed.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands up unless I'm missing you out there. So we do have a motion that is on the floor. No other discussion. We'll vote on the motion. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? That motion passes. All right. Next item is the proposed Route 100 landscaping project. Rick.
All right, thank you, Chair Gaetano. This next item has been in front of this committee on previous occasions. And you may recall, I think most of you probably are aware, last year at this time, or last spring of 2020, landscaping was installed in the median of Route 100 between Taylor Road to West Glen Farms. And this was a continuation of work that had been done previously. In 2015, as part of a MoDOT project, there was landscaping that was installed at West Glen Farms and Route 100 and Manchester Road. And as you know, on 109, those improvements have featured landscaping in the median and the circles of the roundabouts. And also on the recent Manchester Road streetscape project, we implemented and included landscaping in that project. So beautifying our roadways has been a priority as of late. And of course, the mayor has been a very strong proponent of doing that very thing. So along those lines, we did have Ken Keitel recently put together some landscaping plans to give us an idea of what would be feasible to continue the landscaping and beautification that's been done primarily on Route 100. And it had been suggested that any future landscaping may want to be done outside the immediate town center area. And so for that reason, we chose Route 100, but we went further to the west and looked at the corridor from Pond Road all the way out to St. Albans Road, or Route T. And knowing that we have potential improvements that we're going to talk about next at St. Albans Road and Pond Road, we felt it wasn't such a good idea to, even those might be good locations, we felt like we should probably hold off at this time, considering landscaping at those two intersections. So that led us to look at potentially Wild Horse Creek Road and Mueller Road as two locations where we could implement some landscaping and beautification, kind of in line as to what was done last year at Taylor Road and immediately to the east. So included in my memorandum were some drawings that Ken Keitel with Terraspec had put together for your consideration. Ken put together, his initial plan was what I'm referring to as kind of a full preferred plan. That was Ken's proposal to us in his first brush with landscaping. After reviewing that plan, we kind of said, Ken, can you scale it back? Can you try to put together a less extensive plan? And so that's what he's done. So you have two options in front of you for consideration, what we've called a full plan and a scaled back plan. Again, both would put landscaping in the medians of 100 at Mueller Road and at Wild Horse Creek Road at the two crossovers. The full plan, the estimated cost to implement it was about $88,000, just under 90 grand. The scaled back plan was about $63,000 in cost. And I know you're going to ask it. This is not a project that we have budgeted for 2021 currently. So the department was anticipating that the earliest this might occur would be potentially next year. But what I would like to do is get some feedback from the committee at this point with regard to this project. What do you think? What do you prefer? Do you like the full landscape plan that Ken put together, or is the scaled back plan appropriate for both these two locations? And I think at this point, I'll turn it over for any questions.
All right, let the city administrator add in something there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did just want to add just a little bit of clarification to the fine presentation that Mr. Brown just made. The mayor did reach out to Rick and I with regards to landscaping, and he had mentioned initially 3 to 4 areas of planting, as Rick said, from 109 all the way out to Highway T. But it is important to note that there is going to be, in the not too distant future, 2 of those 4, there's going to be construction by MoDOT, which would basically tear up what we're talking, of those things. And so it's silly to do that. We'd just wait till they're done to do it. But the other 2 do make sense. However, when he came back, that's when I asked Rick to go back to Ken Keitel and see if he couldn't throttle it back a little bit, because I was taking into consideration comments that were made by Councilmember Edens and by Councilmember Dodwell, and you both had said pretty much the same thing: less is more. And so those words were not lost on me in terms of planning a whole bunch of stuff. Ms. Dodwell had mentioned how great the medians looked on Strecker Road, because we, according to one of our residents, we ripped out all those thriving, healthy plants and left just one plant. And I say that tongue in cheek, but your point is well taken that we, if you look at some of these drawings, it looks like 1 billion plants in these places. And I think that's way too much. I even think that the second one might be a little bit too much, quite honestly, but you all get, I don't get a vote in this thing, but I'd like to see it even reduce even more. But that's kind of the history of how this all came about. So at the end of the day, we're looking for the 2 areas planted, but that just, when you look at these drawings, it just looks like a heck of a lot of plants. Plants grow, plants, expand and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you got an overgrown situation. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth in terms of the conversation that Rick and I have had, a couple of conversations, and then initially with the mayor. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. And before I open up the questions, Rick, just a point of clarification. Did I hear you correctly that the earliest to do this work would be the spring?
Yes.
I see nodding. Yeah.
Yes.
So with that, and I'm not sure, if this will be a quick and easy direction by the committee, or if there'll be a lot of questions. But does that mean with the spring, are you looking for that action by tonight, or do we have some flexibility?
I think Chair Garitano, there is some flexibility there. I hear you wanting to maybe defer the decision on this. I think that would be acceptable if that's what the committee would like to do.
Well, I'm just not sure. I think we'll know based on the types of questions. I think if we get into a lot of questions, there might be a need for maybe additional discussion offline. And I know some folks might have more expertise in the subject, so I want to make sure they have an opportunity to get into it. So let's kind of see where we go with this, and then we'll see. But at least we know we don't necessarily have to make that action tonight. So I apologize, I may get the order wrong, but I think Councilmember Bertolino, Edens, and Rambo showed up in Dodwell. So let's end 9. So let's give everyone then a chance to go ahead and go with their questions. So Councilmember Bertolino, you're up.
Thanks, Joe. Rick, my comments are that I thought that when we were doing the landscaping 2 years ago, where it was when we actually did the section from on 109, or I'm sorry, from Manchester Road, roughly at West Glen up to 109, we did those. We cut back that plan considerably, as I recall. It was a much more robust project, and we whacked it back to something maybe a third of what we originally planned. And I thought that those plans originally had some very good ideas about the intersection of 109 and Manchester Road, or 100. And it seems to me that traffic-wise, where there's probably more traffic on 109 getting on and getting off at Manchester Road than there would be farther out in the city. I just wonder why we would want to spend our money now on those outer reaches when we never really completed the landscaping plan that we had for that major interchange.
Well, I think your point is well taken. There's certainly lots of real estate that could be beautified, and Ken is more than happy to put together plans for us to do just that. And he has done quite a few of them for us to consider. So it really depends on what the priority is and where we want to spend the money next. But I think this is coming from the mayor. He really felt that it was important to try to do a little bit more out west, that we've focused very much thus far on the town center area. But it might be time to spread some of that money and some of those beautification dollars further to the west or somewhere outside of the town center area. So that's what was driving us to look at 100 from Pond to Route T.
Dave, are you good with that?
Well, I would challenge that, and I would talk to the mayor personally and say, he had some really great ideas about the beautification farther in, i.e. the Manchester Road to 109. And as I would repeat to Jim, if he was on this call, I'd say, we had great plans and we never really quite made them as robust as I think we could have. Let's not move west until we've completed what we really started closer to town center.
All right. All right, let's see how everyone else, if there's any opinion on that. Councilmember Edens, you're up.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say, when I think we voted on this originally, the first round of plantings, as mentioned, in 2019, and there was a big argument, and I believe it started out in the $60,000 range, and it got hatcheted down to about $40,000. And I supported the full plantings, and one of the things I said at the time was, remember, you're talking about what less than one household may spend on their backyard or a partial home remodel. And this is on a municipal scale, and it's much larger. I still stand by that. My concern now is exactly what Mr. Cross mentioned, is just whether we should add more at all right now. And by right now, I mean in the next year. I say that because I think we need to go through some of our previous plantings and other medians. and redo them. And when I get complaints about maintenance, and sometimes it's not even ours, sometimes just people see, grass mowing not done as frequently by the state or the county because of labor shortages, and it adds up in their mind as things are not being maintained. How dare you pay for something new? There is that attitude among my residents for sure. And so I'm having a hard time justifying when there's labor shortages for maintenance, why I want to add more if I don't know that that's going to turn around in 2022 spring, because I'm not convinced that it will turn around in 2022 quick enough. And I don't know how we're going to maintain what we add. So I'm going to offer a bold thought here, which is let's circle back in 2024 so that it's somewhere on the 5-year plan. I would love to continue with what the original plans included in Town Center. I have no problem with going farther out west and including it. So I think it's good to remind people that there's still a section of Wildwood down there. We have a different aesthetic. You're not just going towards Franklin County, you're still in Wildwood. I'm fine with that. But I don't think 2022 is the next year. I'd like to think 23 could be, but we may be looking at 24. And we've got a lot of work we need to do, some honeysuckle cutbacks, some dollars on trail maintenance and other areas. And just one other food for thought, which is low sumac is in the plans. And you know what? It is a survivor. It's not invasive. I have noticed driving in different cities and our own that when it's next to grass, which it will be in the median, that it kind of blends in. You're talking about some of the same shades of green that just kind of don't necessarily stand out. So just food for thought, but I can't support this for next year. And I really want to. I love planning. I really pushed hard for the full expensive plan the first time, but we just got to readdress what's in our current medians, and I'd rather spend the money on ash tree removal and deer.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councilmember Edens. Next, and by the way, you gave me a thought when you were mentioning that, so maybe it's something to consider, City Administrator, that it may be helpful to help inform residents what's the difference between city maintained roads versus state maintained and county, because it's not really just this year. We've been fighting that battle with ODOT and the county for as long as I know. So I think it's good for folks to know who's maintains what. So maybe a communication or something in the future, or a future Gazette entry might be a good primer on what that is. So that was just a thought you had me think of when you mentioned that, Councilmember Edens. All right, Councilmember Rambo, you're up.
Okay, guys, I can talk about planning all day, and I'll make this quite brief. I agree with Dave Bertolino completely on the cost. I agree with Ms. Edens completely on the approach of postponing it. I have several reasons for the latter, primarily the fact that we're reworking all of our planting guides and so forth, and trying to minimize certainly the invasives, but also the non-natives. And this plan, my internet was down for 5 days. I did not get to a good look at the proposal, but I did, glanced at it, and sure enough, there's, species from Asia and Europe and so on and so forth. And it's the typical thing that we have. And it's a riot of plantings. I love the intersection there by Schnooks. It welcomes people to Wildwood. It's beautiful and so forth, but it takes maintenance. You got to mulch, you got to weed it, because it's relatively formal and it's dramatic and it's splashy, and I like that, but we don't need that in some of the places that we're contemplating. Out by me, it'll stand out like a sore thumb because it's a rural environment. We can do a couple of native shrubs, or maybe a patch of native shrubs or something that blooms in an area. It will look landscaped, and it will blend in over time. We won't have to spend money mulching it and going around it and maintaining it, and it won't be hard to sustain it because it's meant for that area. We need to do a lot more of that. And I'm hoping that if we do postpone that, a lot of those thoughts and many, many others will be in our planting guides. And we'll be able to do a better job of it. And in the meantime, we can do, as Lauren said, some things with the deer and some things with maintaining what we already have. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Rob. Councilmember Dodwell.
I tend to agree with what everybody else had said. My first question was going to be, are we planting these in the spring or are we planting them in the fall? If you even consider planting them in the spring, they're going to be dead by the end of the by the fall season, or we're going to have to contract to water a lot of stuff. So I would be amenable to making it a smaller type of arrangement for the far west end. I know we had individuals indicating that nothing's happening on their end of the city. So if we could come down with a perhaps smaller plan for that part of the city. And then my other question was, Mr. Bertolino brought this up, but what do we still need to do in town center? We have plantings all over the place in town center, other than repairing the trees along Old Manchester that are in disrepair. I don't know where else do we need to be planting things. We're replacing the ash trees. We're replacing things in our garden areas. So I'm just confused and
Nope, I appreciate the input, Katie. Thank you. You're good. All right, good feedback. Councilmember 9, you're up. You trying to unmute or?
Oh, did you say me?
Yeah, you're up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. I apologize. And I'm going to mirror what most of you have already said. I do think conceptually it would be kind of nice to have almost a gateway to Wildwood if you're coming from the other direction. Like all of a sudden you can tell, oh, we're approaching a community, a city, like this kind of ties it all together. So I'm not totally opposed to it, but I do think that's probably too much and too overgrown. That's a rural looking area anyways, like it doesn't need as much beautification. And I also really worry about the maintenance because that's an ongoing cost for ever. So I think that's something that needs to be considered too. So I agree with what everybody said.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Hey, I'll just share some thoughts that I jotted down. So I agree with the looking at a smaller type of concept there. I have heard from folks that live in the western part of our city that sometimes they feel that a lot of attention is focused on the town center area and that they do not see the similar type of attention. So I think in a way that's addresses some of it, providing some kind of beautification. I'm not going to comment on the type of species and plantings. I'll defer to the opinions of council members like Edens and Rambo who know more about this subject matter, and certainly the city's the expert that the city hires. The idea, I think, is really around beautification. And I think there was someone just mentioned now we need a way to kind of welcome people in. And we did look at this in the Admin Public Works Committee, where we were looking at the area on the west side of the 109 bridge. And there were actually plans drawn up. Rick did work on it, where there was like signage, like I think in stone, that said Wildwood, that would be put in that area that is as you approach the bridge. And actually someone asked me that not too long ago, whatever happened to it. And we deferred it because at the time there were some folks on council that were very opinionated about not wanting to do anything. So that could be something we can revisit, because I think it would be great if you all got a chance to see some of those drawings. They were really nice. Besides a smaller planting option, one of the things that Wildwood traditionally has never done, and Rick, keep me honest here, but when you look to our neighbor to the east, Ellisville, they supplement the grass cutting along the median of 100, because if you rely on MoDOT, you basically get what we get. We just started, if I recall correctly, we just started doing some additional mowings by the city in the median, which makes it look nice, but it's only the section up to 109, I think, up to the bridge, if I recall, or up to Taylor. But that could be another, I don't know the cost. I'm going to guess that it's a low cost option to clean up that median up a little bit better than way it is, because if you rely on MoDOT, you get cut 2 or 3 times a year. That's it. So we could do little extras like that don't take a lot of effort, and it's just additional grass cutting that clean it up, just really make it look nicer in the middle like that. So just food for thought, and the committee, we can look at that. But those are my thoughts around there, because we've talked about it. In fact, I remember even one time someone brought up in our admin public works, those signs that say Wildwood, welcome to Wildwood, thinking of like putting some landscaping around them. We never went anywhere because the issue came up that there's no water to keep them irrigated. So there's an appetite, but maybe not, to keep it within a reasonable cost. So perhaps this committee could continue to pursue it, but be creative in what options we look at.
Mr. Chair, just to kind of echo what you were saying, yes, we have begun to hire Glenn Gailey and his crew to cut the medians. MoDOT cuts twice a year, and that's it. And so grass grows, more than just twice a year. And so as you all have heard before, the Galeys were having some manpower issues and some health issues. They're past that now, at least certainly the health issues. And I think even the manpower, they're kind of coming back and helping. Glenn is out here with his truck, and he's watering all of our planters and so forth out front. He's got a big truck that he actually could go and do some other waterings as well, but he is cutting the median. It's really not that expensive. So we are going to continue that. Trying to rely on MoDOT is it just isn't worth it. So he cuts it, but we also, even if MoDOT cuts it, there's still all this grass growing around any of the signs and so forth. I mean, which, having the grass cut's one thing, but then when you see the sign and you got all this stuff growing up around it, it just kind of ruins the effect. So they're going back out with weed eaters and trimming all around the signs at the cutovers, the crossovers and so forth. So that's going to be kind of a permanent situation, in my opinion. And I've asked Rick and Joe Vunich to arrange for that, to have just Glenn do that on a regular basis, so that the medians, as well as the sides of the highway, okay, a swath or two on each side of the highway, because those get pretty raunchy looking as well. And so I've asked that they do a couple, 2 or 3 passes along on the shoulders as well. So I'd say just plan on that kind of being a permanent situation, because it really isn't that much. It isn't that expensive. We'll just build it into the budget.
Well, I think that's a great approach. I always admired when I drove into Ellisville along 100, you could just see the difference with the grass cut there, and I'd see them cutting quite regularly. So I'm glad that we're doing it. So maybe the question is, are we doing it all the way out west, Steve, or is that maybe something that maybe would help with from a beautification, if we could just get the area?
I think we've gone, and Rick can answer this better than I, but I think we're going west of 109. Didn't we have him go west of 109, Rick? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, Glenn has been instructed to mow to Pond Road, but he hasn't gone past Pond Road. So obviously there's quite a bit of real estate left, but he's been going from Pond to West Glen Farms Manchester Road.
So if we really want to see a difference, you drive west of Pond, you're going to notice that it's not as cut as it is.
Right.
So it could be something that at least, helps to address some of that desire for beautification if we're already doing it. And then at least our residents that live out that west don't question why we don't take care of their area like we do with the rest of the city. Councilmember Edens, you have your hand up.
Okay. Gonna throw this out here for future conversation, and we can circle back. So the areas that we're already supplementing to mow, because we know MoDOT can't get to it. So we're paying for this, and we're talking about beautification. Can we look into what it would take to sow wildflowers and native grasses and just let it grow? Because that can be rather beautiful. It can be great for the butterflies and bees, and it could save us a lot of money in the long run and have a high survival rate. Now, Rob would know a lot more about that than me, and I'm not sure what the height would be when they would grow in. But we could also consider adding it between the formal landscape that we've already done between Terrace Spec as well for a trial run on the short strip. That would look really good, I think, going out west. And maybe, I doubt it'll work, but we could perhaps approach MoDOT and say, you know, the money that you normally spend mowing twice a year, well, we have a harebrained scheme to plant something that you wouldn't have to mow. Would you consider supplementing the cost? Since you've already budgeted mowing, would you help us pay to install these native grasses and wildflowers? Rick's chortling because he knows it won't work, but in my dream world, it will work. So just want to throw that out there. Maybe we can get an estimate for this.
No, I think it would work. In fact, rather than supplement that, take the money that they're saving and use it to cut the areas more than twice a year. I'd approach it.
Yes.
And save us the cost of Gailey, which is a lot more than just planting some wildflowers. I would ask them, you know, to add a third cut or something and save us at least one cutting from the Gaileys. But I think your concept is great.
And there might be a state group, I know, like Mo Prairie Foundation. There's some grants for projects, back to nature projects like this. So maybe we could get some publicity and have someone underwrite it and help us pick the native plants. But I'm seeing potential for beauty and a lower mowing budget, and we should really talk about that.
So it looks like we've got a variety of ideas that have been brought up by folks, and this is good, and no need to beat this because we don't have to necessarily take action tonight, you know. So perhaps maybe Rick and Steve, you guys want to go back and kind of in the think tank and see what ideas you come up with and bring it back to this group to see if there's an appetite for doing something a bit different. I think we had a lot of great ideas.
Yeah. I like the wildflower ideas, to be honest with you. I really like that idea.
I would suggest Mr. Embe might want to speak to that because I know he's pretty knowledgeable about native grasses and the difficulty and the challenges of getting those implemented. And it's not an easy endeavor, unfortunately.
Well, Mr. Rambo, Dr. Rambo.
I lost all my advanced degrees. I mean, crime and eminently. Spent a lot of time in college for nothing, I guess. I can talk about this forever, but I won't. What I will say is that the costs, there's quite a bit of labor cost involved. There's you have to spray, unfortunately, to kill the existing plantings, like let's say spring, summer, and fall, and then maybe again in the spring. And the seeds, though, for beautiful wildflower mixes with some native grasses mixed in, are between $400 and $800 per acre. And if you're talking about a linear acre, that's quite a bit of coverage for a very low cost. And so you could just double up on the seeds. And if you prepare the ground properly and do some mowing, you have to mow the first couple of years particularly, but it just gets better and better every year if you can keep the invasives out. And so I think this is a spectacular idea. I've tried to do it even in the right-of-way. Steve and I talked about this a little bit. I had MoDOT's permission to do restoration work even along the right-of-way of 100 for about, I don't know, I have like a quarter mile of frontage. And the only thing that was missing was Wildwood's agreement to take over the maintenance if I should keel over of a heart attack. And there's some bureaucracy associated with it, and I haven't run the rabbits because I've had bigger fish to fry. But I would say that Wildwood could be a leader, and it could be. We could make it spectacular at very little cost of plants that thrive based on the conditions they're presented with. Some, some years X looks beautiful. Some years Y and Z look beautiful, but you always got something blooming, and you got the butterflies and everything, and you're not polluting, and you're not knocking everything down and making it look. I think mown median looks ugly, and we could do a whole lot better. So that's my spiel. We can talk a lot more about it. I'm hoping some of that gets into our planning guide as well, but that's kind of the rough cost. Final thing I'll say is at Bell, what is that, Bell, that park that we leased from the county, they're doing, it's costing about 20 grand to restore I think it's a 6-acre meadow to wildflower glory. So that'll give you an idea of what it costs, including the labor and the chemicals. 20 grand for 6 acres, that's 3 grand an acre or something like that. And if we're talking about a couple acres or a few acres of median, because it's only 30 feet wide, that means it's, several hundred feet per acre. So we could do all of, from the county line into town center for relatively inexpensive cost. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I think it's a wonderful concept. Cuts pollution, increases the beauty, helps the critters that are having trouble, like the pollinators. So thanks for bringing it up, Lauren.
Thank you. All right, good. And I guess then at that point, no action right now. We'll let them take this feedback and come back with some thoughts and ideas. And maybe what I mentioned before, at some point, we probably want to see, if there's an appetite to look at what the work was done regarding that signage that we did way back.
I made a note of that. I'll pull those, we'll get those and send them out to the committee.
Right, yeah, because I don't know what that means, like from a planning perspective. If we want to pursue that, we probably would be thinking about it at the right time.
It was beautiful. There was lighting and stone. I mean, it was that was about 2 years ago. And it was, some of those drawings they were great,
MoDOT was not receptive, unfortunately, to those drawings.
No.
And that's primarily why we dropped it at the time, because they wouldn't authorize them.
Okay.
That was some big signage, but I would just ask that we move this particular topic to a next meeting or something, so that we can get started in this process, because this sounds like something that needs to go into next year's budget. It sounds doable. If it reduces the costs, then I see no reason why we can't get more detailed on this subject by our next meeting.
Well, somebody's going to have to help us source the glass jars and the mason jars for the honey and stuff, and teach us how to extract honey from honeycombs and stuff that Lauren wants to do. I don't know.
We'll put beehives into 2028 or 2029. Okay.
Yeah, what a great segue, because when we're working on rescheduling the Lawn and Garden Summit, I'm so glad you brought this shameless plug up, Mr. Cross, because the St. Louis Community College Wildwood campus has a scheduling conflict. They are offering up one of their presenters who happens to be a Wildwood native, and the subject will be, in fact, beekeeping.
So
all right,
because I get to wear one of those white suits and run around with one of those smokers things.
Yes, this was going to be part of the budget committee, how to pay for itself, honey.
Well, I think we need to start as a city looking to gain volunteerism from our residents. We have hundreds of residents who would be more than happy to come out and plant along that median if we had the appropriate security around them to do so, just like they did down at the Le Cave Park. We had lots of people that came, besides city council members and city staff, that wanted to participate. We as a city need to start engaging our residents in these kinds of endeavors so that they can put part of themselves into the city in a way that they want to. I really think, in listening to residents from my ward, there's a lot of them that would be more than happy to go out and put a shovel into the ground, trim a few areas, and we just need to get more thoughtful on how we can take that burden off of city or contractors and have city staff perhaps help organize a day or two to do that. But
well, Well, speaking of that, here's what we're doing. You just hit the nail on the head. At last Thursday's coffee with the mayor, a gentleman spoke and said, "Hey, how can I help? Do more volunteering." So the mayor passed it to me. So I met with the gentleman afterwards, got his contact information. But I was also asked to develop a program, how we can engage our residents and put out on social media or some way to get more resident participation. We have a lady and her husband who actually live in Ellisville who have been weeding the roundabout at Taylor and Manchester. So Mr. Young is redoing our volunteer, our waiver form to update the waiver form. And then we need to hand out reflective vests because we need the safety issue. So we're working on that. So I expect to see the revised waiver form in the next day or two. And then we're going to put together the process. But more importantly, we're going to develop a program so that we can reach out to our residents and say, if you want to volunteer, here are some suggestions of things that you can do. Contact so-and-so, and we'll designate somebody here at City Hall who would be the point person to gather that information and so forth. So right now it's a hot topic in terms of how are we going to gauge our residents safely and make sure that, there is a liability to the city and how they can volunteer. So we're working on that right now as we speak.
Perfect, because we could put a button on the homepage that says,
volunteer.
If you want to volunteer, click here.
All right. So I'm gonna say let's take that offline. We're going off agenda.
I'm sorry.
Here.
I know we're way off agenda. I'm sorry.
The ideas are good, and I don't want to get too far off of it. So anyway, we'll continue to look into that because there's a lot of ideas around that. Well, being that is it. We did good. Thank you so much.
There's one more item I think Rick has.
Oh, you are correct. I was close. So the proposed MoDOT cost share application, Rick.
Thank you, Chair Gaetano. Council members, I know you're very familiar with this discussion. We've talked in past meetings regarding potential funding sources to move forward with construction of improvements on Route 100. As you know, MoDOT has done a study and recommended essentially two projects for future implementation on Route 100. The State Route 100 J-turn project, which would install J-turns on 100 at St. Albans Road or Route T, and also at Pond Road. And then the State Route 100 left turn project, which would add left turn lanes on Route 100 at 4 intersections: Booness Lane, Woodland Meadows, Hinken Road, as well as Hawks Rest, Windy Hollow. Both those projects are currently unfunded. We did put in applications as a city to East West Gateway earlier in the year, and unfortunately we were not successful. So in the follow-up of those unsuccessful applications, we've kind of been pointed towards the direction of submitting an application to the state under MoDOT's cost share program. Now, these are state funds. They're not federal funds. They come through MoDOT directly, but they do have a MoDOT does have a program where we can submit these projects for consideration under. Now, the downside with going this route directly is that the maximum we can get is 50% of the overall eligible costs. So it's not as lucrative as the federal funding programs that we typically go after. But we have utilized it in the past, and we did use it for the 109 improvement project more recently. It was one of the sources of funding that we tapped into, frankly, after the federal funding sources dried up. So kind of along those same lines, I think the recommendation would be to put in applications for both of the two projects, one each, here in essentially the next month, because the next deadline is coming up rather quickly, and it's October 7th. So what I'm asking for, the recommendation, I guess, to the committee is that we move forward with that application process, and which does have a deadline of October 7th. So with that, I guess I'll open it up for any questions that you might have in this regard.
All right. Well, thanks, Rick. I think this one's fairly straightforward. We've revisited this, so just a different application, slightly different formula. Is there anyone that wants to make a motion to proceed with the application there. So I saw Councilmember Edens and then Councilmember Bertolino. So we've got the motion on the floor. So are there any questions for Rick, or does everyone get this? All right, I think this one's an easy one. I'm going to sense there's consensus to move forward, so we'll do just a voice vote. So with that motion on the floor to proceed with that application, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Any opposed? Any abstain? And that motion passes. All right, Rick, you got that. So that'll be good. So now, now we could say that we're getting close to the end of the meeting. So we've got a couple not ready for action. Anything under miscellaneous? All right. Oh, Councilmember Edens, go ahead.
I know it was off topic before, and I've been sitting on this about the volunteering. And I just want to offer a thought to City Administrator Cross when you're developing this. So there are apps that would help take and other websites you can enroll in that would take the work off of staff. I know when I had volunteers or people that wanted to do work for watershed erosion, Celebrate Wildwood, I had to send some names to Kathy Arnett. I've sent some names to Bree, some names to you. And I know that a central repository can be hard, but these apps, so they keep track of whether or not somebody signed a waiver. You check off whether or not you can do certain types of physical labor, what days you tend to be available, what jobs you're interested in. Then the staff member would just have to put, a quote, call out for work that's needed, and it pushes through as a notification, and then people sign up on their end, and you just get notified of the people that have signed up, that they can be there. You control the reminders that are sent, so you could set it up so reminders go to cell phone numbers in a text form or email. And there are other ways that you can list on additional apps. So I know my bike rehab group uses this. I think Key Club at Lafayette does. They have their volunteers look at other websites and apps to see what volunteer opportunities are available based on a geographic location. So the other thing that we can consider is publicly posting on those forums. So we've got a lot of folks that don't check our city website, but they may already be enrolled in other websites that list volunteer opportunities. So two fronts: listing on pre-existing, and then enrolling in an app or some sort of website where it takes the work off of staff, it makes sure everybody's done the waivers, and coordinates the messaging. Because sending out a bunch of emails and trying to keep track of who signed up is not effective, and it doesn't have to be done anymore. And there's some really cool opportunities with a program like this. So thanks for forward thinking and developing it.
Well, thank you for volunteering to handle all that. We really appreciate that.
You know what? I don't know as much as I'm acting like I do, but I know people who do know, so I can help get the right information.
You sound like the expert, so thank you very much. Now, I'm joking, of course. We're here to serve you all, but actually, if you do know some of those apps or whatever, if you can just send them my way, I appreciate that. I'm an old guy, so I don't know about that kind of stuff. So appreciate that.
There's one called GovPilot, GovPilot. That's for government side. I do one for our church. There's another one called Mobilize that gets good ratings.
We may even have something in house that I don't even know about that we were kind of dabbling in for something like this. I mean, we've done volunteers. So Kathy may have had something, Bree may have something, whatever. So, but yeah, we'll look into that. So thank you very much for the suggestion. I appreciate it.
That's why we have the clock tower. Steve gets up there and just starts ringing a bell.
Exactly.
Hear you, everyone come.
It's been a while, but might need to get you up there. So
they're still trying to find something I can do right, so I'll try that next.
That should be the new economic development title, just town crier, nothing else.
Crier.
Town crier.
all right.
There you go.
Well,
And I feel the need to publicly apologize to Justina, because as she was walking out the door, I said, Justina, we're going to cut it off at 6:30 because we all have to go to another meeting and it's only going to be an hour. And clearly I misspoke. So she's going to yell at me tomorrow when she comes here. So I'm publicly apologizing now for misleading her.
we're doing good. I mean, considering how much we went through, this
Sorry,
was actually
Justina.
this was productive. I mean, we got through quite a bit on this list here. So I am just so glad because, you know, we're coming up at 2 hours. So just a quick update under miscellaneous, because the city administrator had sent an email about, you know, as City Hall has now been reopened and, you know, they're looking at meetings and how things will start to look in the new world that we're in. We did talk about how things are working as far as the Zoom meetings go for the committee here, this specific committee. And I know Councilmember Edens, being the chair of economics, is aligned with this thought, but it's working good right now. And given what we know that the current situation, obviously Delta variant, and that at least the thinking is continue to just proceed for now. Certainly want to hear if you have any thoughts or input, just send me a note, call me, let me know what you like, what you don't like about this. But I do think that in my high level thought, I would say, you know, Zoom meetings are very good. We're getting the work done here. And then periodically there may be an opportunity where we do meet in person. Try to see, you know, if it's, you know, 2-3 times a year next year, but we'll see just how things kind of shake out. But at least right now, we'll just keep moving with this right here because it is working really good for city staff, for you and the residents that have participated, who have had to come and speak to items here and at other committee meetings. So we'll certainly look for any input like that. The next meeting, please note that there is a schedule change. So the next meeting is October 12th. This is where we kind of get into a little bit of an off-cycle schedule because of the budget season. We rearrange our meetings so that we will have ample time to review the administration and public works budgets, be able to then review them as a committee and then send them to council, because that is all carefully planned out, the timeline, and therefore we will adjust this meeting so that October 12th is the next meeting, and then at the end of October will be another meeting, and then we do not meet in November usually, and then December we resume the first Tuesday of the month. So just want to make you aware of that there. You had a question, Katie? Yep.
Lauren, didn't you move economic development to the 12th too,
I did,
We're doing both meetings.
at the
although,
same time?
No. We're going to figure out the time so that we can do maybe this meeting at 5:30 and then economic development like at 6:30, 5:30 and 6:30, something like that. Yes.
Oh, okay.
yep, the original email that I sent out today said regular time, but I didn't realize that this one was going to be a 5:30 meeting, and so it looks like there'll be a additional email revising the time.
And that's my fault. I guess I didn't clarify the fact that I've asked Chair Garitano if he could move it to the 12th, and I asked Chair Edens if she could move it. And it's all related to the budget. Again, we hand out the documents, and then, you know, we get them back from the department heads, and then we get them back, and we want them to, we need for, you know, the admin, we need P&P, you know, economic development, et cetera, to review the stuff, Board of Public Safety. So we've had to kind of move some meetings around. We appreciate you all accommodating it. And Lauren, I'm sorry that I didn't mention about the time.
Oh, no worries.
I did put 2 meetings at the 12th and hoping that we would kind of just, you know, one after the other one.
So Lauren, more pressure on us to keep it to an hour because there's economic development, and not only Lauren, but I think some others we'll need to get to that one there. So keep that in mind. All right, with that then, we can adjourn. So is there a motion to adjourn? No adjournment? Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Bertolino. So we got a first and second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 The opposed and the abstain, the motion adjourn passes. Okay, we're good. We're done. Thanks so
Thanks,
much, everyone.
everyone.
Good
Thanks.
meeting, really
Good meeting.
appreciate it.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Gals.